Imagine waking up in a world where your body refuses to be only what you were taught to be, where the people who are supposed to protect you see you as a prize, and the people who claim to love you might betray you. Picture a woman who has survived being used, caged, and reduced to someone else's plan, and then discovers she might be the linchpin of a new, dangerous future. That woman is Serena, a hybrid half-human, half-werewolf, and this is a story of how she is hunted, saved, claimed, and eventually learns how to choose for herself. Tonight, we'll take you through every chapter of Ali Hazelwood's Mate. Let's begin. Prologue. The world had forgotten how to fear the dark. Cities glowed, so bright that people no longer noticed the eyes that watched from the woods. They thought monsters were myths, stories meant to scare children into staying home after sunset. But monsters were real. They just learned to wear human skin. Long before Serena could speak, her world was built on secrets and lies. She was born in a laboratory, where scientists whispered about creating a perfect blend of species, human intelligence fused with the strength of wolves. They called her Project Lyra, never giving her a real name until Misery, the vampire nurse who pitted her, whispered one in her ear. Serena. For years, Serena lived behind steel doors, taught only obedience and silence. When she was 12, the facility burned, and she escaped into a world that wanted her dead or captured. She learned to survive by hiding, by counting, by never trusting anyone with her real story. She believed freedom meant solitude, until a night in a lonely cabin when a creature of legend crashed into her life and changed everything. That was the night she met Kun Alexander, the alpha whose presence would destroy her isolation and rebuild her destiny. The night air was sharp and biting when Serena woke to the sound of splintering wood. Her pulse spiked instantly, and the old fear flooded back, that primal, body-deep awareness that danger was close. She had been living alone for months in a remote cabin, trying to forget the trauma of captivity and the unwanted experiments that marked her childhood. But danger had a way of finding her. She stumbled toward the back door, barefoot and trembling. A shadow loomed against the window, too fast, too deliberate to be human. The scent of blood and decay hit her before she saw him. A vampire. Her instincts screamed to shift, to defend, but her body betrayed her. The transformation that came so easily to others refused her again. When the creature broke through the door, Serena had no weapon, no plan, only terror. In a blur of motion, another figure appeared. A man, massive and silent, his presence filled the cabin like a storm. He tore the vampire away from her with terrifying precision. Bones cracked, and in seconds, the fight was over. The stranger's eyes glowed amber in the dim light, a werewolf's eyes. His voice, low and commanding, vibrated with restrained power as he looked down at her and said, "You're mine." That was the first time Serena heard his name, Kun Alexander, the alpha of the Southwest Pack. Her gratitude was drowned by unease. She didn't know him, yet his gaze was possessive, his words a claim. As he lifted her trembling body from the ground, Serena felt both safe and trapped. Something in his scent called to her, primal recognition that terrified her even more than the attack she'd survived. When Serena woke again, she was in a strange room that smelled faintly of pine and smoke. Kun was there, standing by the window, watching her with quiet intensity. He didn't waste words. "You're my mate," he said, as though stating the weather. The phrase meant something enormous in his world, a biological bond between werewolves that united lives and fates. But Serena wasn't a normal wolf. She was a hybrid, part human, part something else, a complication that made her existence a political threat. She didn't want to believe him. The last time men had spoken of bonds, it had been in the language of ownership and science, not love. But Kun was unflinchingly calm, almost awkward in his honesty. "You don't have to accept it," he said. "It doesn't make you mine. It just is." That strange mixture of certainty and restraint left Serena uncertain whether to feel anger or reluctant trust. Through quiet conversation, the foundation of their dynamic emerged. Kun wasn't interested in romance or games. He was pragmatic, self-controlled, and focused on her safety. Yet even as he spoke, Serena sensed something under his calm, the steady hum of suppressed instinct. He didn't touch her again, not even when she shivered. He just stood close enough for her to feel the heat radiating off his body, the dangerous comfort of a predator choosing not to strike. The next morning, Kun insisted they leave the cabin. The vampire attack wasn't random. Someone knew where Serena was. They drove south, through stretches of open highway and endless desert. Serena watched the scenery blur, the isolation reminding her of how small she felt in his world. To her surprise, Kun drove with patience, classical music humming softly from the radio. He didn't talk much, but when he did, his words were deliberate, about pack laws, about territory, about safety, never about himself. When they stopped for food, Serena noticed how people's eyes followed Kun, the way they sensed his power without understanding it. There was an air of control around him, a man who could kill without hesitation but preferred not to. For the first time, Serena saw that his dominance wasn't cruelty. It was responsibility, a burden he wore like armor. When they finally reached his home, the heart of his pack's land, Serena felt the pulse of something ancient in the air. Wolves moved like shadows between trees, the scent of fur and earth thick. Kun introduced her simply. "She's under my protection." The words carried the weight of law. Serena's arrival did not go unnoticed. Within days, rumors spread, whispers that the alpha had found a hybrid mate. To the packs, such a union was unheard of, a disruption to the old order. But the danger didn't come from wolves alone. Humans and vampires alike had been watching Serena for years, their curiosity sharpened by fear and greed. When a media leak revealed her identity, chaos followed. Kun's rage was cold and silent. He doubled the guards, refused to let her leave the compound. Serena hated the confinement, the echo of her old captivity. But she also knew the truth. The world beyond the walls was hungrier for her blood than ever before. In tense meetings with his advisors, Kun navigated politics with the same precision he fought with. He wasn't eloquent, but he was respected. The other alphas argued about treaties, boundaries, and who had rights over Serena's fate. Kun ended the debate by saying, "She belongs to no one. She stays free as long as I breathe." That sentence, spoken with terrifying calm, silenced them all. Doctors came and went. They drew blood, measured heartbeats, whispered about hormone irregularities. Serena felt less like a person and more like a study again. Her hybrid biology responded erratically to the mate bond, surges of instinct, heat, and emotional intensity she couldn't predict. The idea that her own body might betray her terrified her more than any external threat. Layla, the pack's medic, tried to reassure her. "It's just biology catching up," she said gently. But Serena knew it was more. She feared that the bond would strip away her choice, that she'd wake one day with no will of her own. Kun, for all his restraint, was not immune either. His scent changed when she entered a room. His pupils darkened, his control slipping for seconds before he forced it back. There was tenderness in those moments, unspoken, fragile. He never forced proximity, never used strength to claim her. But Serena could feel the war inside him. Desire against duty, instinct against respect. The pack slowly revealed itself to her. Misery, the sharp-tongued vampire who had once been her protector, Lo, Kun's loyal second-in-command, and Brenna, the warrior who treated Serena like a sister. For the first time, Serena experienced something that felt like family. They teased her gently, brought her food, included her in small rituals. She learned their routines, shared hunts, dinners under the open sky, laughter after long days. Kun's leadership became clearer in those domestic moments. He was firm but fair, his presence grounding the pack. They trusted him completely, and slowly, Serena realized why. He ruled not through fear, but through quiet consistency. Even when he was infuriatingly controlling, there was a strange security in his steadiness. Yet beneath the newfound comfort, danger simmered. Misery warned Serena that visibility came with consequences. "The world doesn't forgive hybrids," she said. "They study us, they cage us, or they kill us." Nightmares haunted Serena. The past came in flashes, metal tables, bright lights, the sound of her own screams. She started counting again, the old method to calm herself, 1 to 1,000, until her heartbeat slowed. Kun noticed but didn't press her to talk. Instead, he stayed close without touching, offering silent presence. One night, when the panic was too much, he sat by her bed and said quietly, "You don't have to be brave all the time." That broke something inside her. She cried for the first time in years, Not from fear, but release. The walls she had built around herself began to crack. Healing wasn't quick. It was raw, uncomfortable, but real. Kuhn's role in her recovery was complex. He wasn't gentle by nature, but he was careful with her. He waited for permission before speaking about the past. And in those quiet moments, Serena began to trust him, not as her alpha, but as a person. The bond between them grew heavier. Whispers in the pack spoke of the next step, the bite that would seal their connection permanently. Serena recoiled at the thought. She couldn't bear another irreversible choice made for her body. When she confronted Kuhn, his expression was unreadable. "I won't take what you don't give," he said. "But it will come for us eventually. It always does." The conversation spiraled into a debate about control and consent. For Kuhn, the bite was natural, inevitable. For Serena, it symbolized everything she feared: ownership, loss of identity, submission. That night, she stood outside under the moon, trying to imagine a life not dictated by others' instincts. For the first time, she wondered if she could rewrite the rules. Trouble found them again. Scouts reported vampire activity near the borders, and a bounty was placed on Serena's head. The pack prepared for war. Serena refused to be a helpless target this time. She trained with Brenna, learned to shoot, to fight, to shift, even if only partially. She discovered a strength she didn't know she had. Each bruise, each ache, became a symbol of reclaiming her body. Kuhn, watching her fight, realized she was no longer the fragile woman he'd rescued. There was pride in his eyes and fear too. He knew the more she grew, the less she might need him. And that possibility both thrilled and terrified him. When the first attack came, they fought side by side. Serena saved Misery's life that night, proving she wasn't just someone to protect, she was a protector herself. Tension gave way to tenderness. After the battle, Kuhn found Serena sitting by the fire, her arms streaked with dirt and blood. He crouched beside her silently. When she looked up, something unspoken passed between them. She reached out first, her fingers brushing his. He didn't move closer, he waited. That patience was what broke her defenses, completely. When they finally kissed, it wasn't a surrender, it was a choice. Every heartbeat carried defiance and acceptance at once. The world still burned around them, politics and danger waiting at dawn, but in that moment, there was only warmth and breath and the fragile understanding that love could exist without control. Serena and Kuhn's fragile peace began to unravel when the assembly sent a formal summons. They were to present themselves before the Council of Alphas, a gathering notorious for judgment and political traps. The pack prepared nervously. The assembly rarely intervened unless it wanted control. Kuhn kept his tone calm, but his jaw was tense. He hated politics. Serena, however, insisted on accompanying him. "If they're going to decide my fate," she said, "they can at least look me in the eye." In the massive marble hall, ancient eyes followed her every step. The moment she spoke, she defied centuries of hierarchy. "I'm not a weapon," she said evenly, "and I'm not your property." The silence that followed was heavier than any roar. That day, Serena's defiance made her both a symbol and a threat. The aftermath of the assembly hearing rippled through the supernatural world. Packs argued over whether hybrids should be accepted or destroyed. Kuhn's decision to stand by Serena divided his allies. Even within his own ranks, whispers grew. Some wolves feared that his attachment weakened him. Kuhn ignored the talk, but Serena saw how the tension ate at him. To ease the strain, she threw herself into work, helping Layla at the infirmary and training with Brenna. She earned respect, one act at a time. When a young wolf was injured on patrol, Serena's quick action saved his life. Slowly, the pack began to see her as one of them, not just the alpha's mate, but a capable member. One night, as storm clouds gathered, Kuhn returned from a council meeting bruised and furious. A rival alpha had accused Serena of destabilizing the region. The argument had nearly turned violent. When Kuhn confessed that he'd almost lost control, Serena reached for him, and for once, he let her see his vulnerability. "They think love is weakness," he said. "Maybe they're right." She shook her head. "Then let's show them it's not." The storm outside broke, rain hammering the windows, and they stood together in the dim light. Two beings who had learned to survive by isolation, now discovering strength and connection. Peace didn't last. A series of attacks struck neighboring territories, coordinated, brutal, and too precise to be coincidence. Evidence pointed toward rogue vampires, but Serena suspected deeper involvement. When she voiced her doubts, Kuhn hesitated. He'd learned to trust her instincts, and this time was no different. Together, they investigated the ruins of a destroyed pack settlement. The site was devastating, scorched earth, the scent of death heavy in the air. Among the wreckage, Serena found something chilling, a syringe marked with the same symbol used by the scientists who once experimented on her. Her past wasn't done haunting her. Someone was recreating the hybrid program, and she was the blueprint. Back home, Serena confronted Kuhn with her discovery. His reaction was explosive, not at her, but at the implication. "They want to make more of you," he said, pacing the room. "And they'll kill anyone in their way." For the first time, Serena saw fear in his eyes, not of enemies, but of losing her. They gathered their closest allies, Misery, Brenna, and Lowe, to plan a response. It became clear that the attacks were a distraction, pulling resources away while scientists operated in secret. Kuhn and Serena made a pact. They would find and destroy the facility together. The journey took them deep into hostile territory. Every mile south brought new dangers, rogue wolves, human hunters, and vampire mercenaries. Along the way, Serena and Kuhn's partnership strengthened. He began to defer to her strategic thinking, a silent acknowledgement of her intelligence. Their trust was tested repeatedly, especially when ambushed one night by bounty hunters. Kuhn was wounded, and Serena was forced to fight alone. In that moment, something primal awakened in her. She shifted, not fully, but enough to unleash the hybrid strength long suppressed. When the fight ended, Kuhn looked at her with awe. "You're magnificent," he murmured. Serena, covered in blood and shaking, finally believed it. They found the facility, hidden beneath an abandoned hospital. The walls reeked of antiseptic and cruelty. Serena's memories crashed back with brutal clarity. The cages, the restraints, the instruments, all identical to those of her childhood. But this time, she wasn't a prisoner. She was a storm breaking in. They freed dozens of captives, hybrids and wolves alike. Kuhn fought like a force of nature beside her. When the last of the guards fell, Serena stood amid the chaos, trembling but victorious. For the first time, she felt her past losing its power over her. The destruction of the facility made Serena a symbol of rebellion. The supernatural world took notice. Some praised her as a liberator, others condemned her as a threat to balance. The assembly called for another meeting, but this time Kuhn refused. "We answer to no one," he said. Instead, he turned his focus inward, strengthening their pack's defenses and helping the rescued hybrids find homes. Yet power attracts danger. A new faction emerged, humans obsessed with controlling supernatural genetics. Their message spread online, painting Serena as proof that monsters could be manufactured. It was propaganda, and it worked. One night, as Serena returned from patrol, an explosion ripped through the pack's compound. The attack was surgical, meant to kill leadership. Kuhn shielded her from the blast, taking the brunt of the impact. He survived, but barely. Serena stayed by his bedside for days, refusing to sleep. When he finally woke, she told him what he needed to hear. "You don't get to leave me behind." Not now. His recovery was slow, but their bond deepened through shared fragility. For once, Serena became the protector, standing guard over the man who had always guarded her. Weeks later, they uncovered the mastermind behind the attacks, a former assembly member named Lucien, who sought to weaponize hybrids. The final confrontation was brutal. Kuhn and Serena led their pack into battle, a united front of wolves and rescued hybrids. The fight was chaos, claws, fire, blood, and roaring hearts. When Lucien fell, Serena stood over his body and realized that vengeance no longer satisfied her. What mattered now was the future. As dawn broke, she looked at Kuhn and saw not an alpha, not a savior, but a partner. Together, they had defied fate, rewritten their story, and begun to build a new world where power no longer meant domination, it meant choice. In the uneasy calm that followed Lucien's downfall, Serena felt an unfamiliar kind of silence spreading through the compound. It was not peace, it was the breath between storms. Wolves patrolled the borders restlessly, and humans began probing with drones and media stories about feral outbreaks. Kun, his injuries still healing, turned more withdrawn. He was learning to lead differently now, allowing Serena to speak at meetings, to plan patrols, to guide the young hybrids who had nowhere else to go. Her voice carried weight. She was no longer someone protected, but someone whose decisions mattered. At night, she lay beside Kun and listened to the distant howls that meant life continued beyond their small sanctuary. Every sound, every breath reminded her how far they'd come and how much was still uncertain. News reached them of rogue vampires forming alliances with human extremists. They planned to raid hybrid shelters, branding hybrids as abominations. Serena refused to wait for orders. She gathered volunteers and moved to intercept them. Her leadership on the battlefield was calm, methodical, born of instinct and empathy. She saved lives that night, but when she returned, the toll showed. She had seen children used as shields, innocents burned by fear. Kun found her in the showers afterward, her body streaked with grime and blood, her eyes hollow. Without words, he sat beside her, letting the water wash the dirt from both of them. For the first time, Serena realized that Kun's silence wasn't distance, it was reverence. The rescued hybrids began forming a small community within the Pax lands. They built greenhouses, learned to farm, hunted only what was needed. Serena organized lessons for the children, teaching them languages, history, and how to defend themselves. The compound transformed into something beautiful, a place not defined by hierarchy but by cooperation. But peace drew attention. Reporters and rival packs sought entry, some genuinely curious, others eager to exploit the hybrid utopia. Kun and Serena decided to open controlled borders, welcoming diplomats from other species. The experiment was fragile, and one mistake could turn everything to ash. One visiting envoy, a sleek vampire named Valen, seemed too interested in Serena's biology. He claimed to represent reformists seeking peaceful coexistence, but Serena's instincts screamed danger. When she confronted him privately, Valen smiled coldly. "Every peace has a price," he whispered. "Yours might be your freedom." Later that night, Kun's scouts caught Valen's associates smuggling data drives out of the compound. Serena's blood samples had been stolen. The betrayal struck deeply, not because of the theft, but because it reminded Serena that trust was still dangerous. Kun burned the stolen data before it could be sold. Together, they stood over the ashes, and she said quietly, "They'll keep coming." He nodded. "Then we'll keep stopping them." Serena began noticing new changes in her body, heightened senses, faster healing, bursts of uncontrollable energy. Layla's tests confirmed that her hybrid DNA was adapting again, influenced by both human science and the deep mate bond she shared with Kun. Her strength scared her. "What if I become the thing they wanted to create?" she asked. Kun's answer was simple. "Then we'll remind them you were human first." The evolution came with pain, fevers, trembling, flashes of memory that weren't hers. But beneath the agony, there was clarity. Serena was not broken or unnatural. She was evolution embodied, and she refused to be ashamed of it. When reports came that human military forces were planning to contain supernatural populations, Serena and Kun had to decide whether to hide or fight. They called a council of allied packs and hybrid leaders. Heated debates erupted. Some wanted open war, others secrecy. Serena stood and said, "If we hide, we prove them right, that we are monsters. If we fight smart, we prove we belong." Her conviction won the room. The decision was made to reveal their existence, publicly, on their terms. Cameras, statements, a coordinated message. It was a risk beyond measure. For centuries, supernatural species had thrived in secrecy. Breaking that rule could change everything. The press conference was held in a reclaimed city square, a neutral ground between species. Serena spoke first, her voice steady despite the flashing lights and murmuring crowd. She didn't plead for acceptance. She declared it. "We exist. We have always existed. We bleed. We build. We love. That makes us no different than you." Kun stood beside her, not as her shadow, but as her equal. The world watched as Alpha and Hybrid stood hand in hand, the image broadcasting to every network. It was history rewritten in real time. But as the crowd dispersed, Serena felt a strange chill. Somewhere, someone had already decided to silence her. The assassination attempt came at dusk 2 days later. A sniper's bullet grazed Kuhn's shoulder before the guards tackled the shooter, a hybrid child coerced into the act. The sight shattered Serena. She held the sobbing boy, realizing the extent of the propaganda being spread. "They told me you'd enslave us," he cried. Her anger burned cold and bright. The enemy wasn't a person, it was fear itself. Kuhn survived, but the attack hardened Serena's resolve. "No more hiding," she said. "If the truth terrifies them, let it." Tensions escalated worldwide. Governments demanded registration laws. Vampire clans plotted coups. Some human cities erupted in riots. In the middle of it all, Serena and Kuhn became reluctant icons. They gave interviews, negotiated truces, and mediated disputes. But the pressure wore them down. One night, after endless diplomacy, they fought, not about politics, but about what they were losing. "I'm not your alpha," Serena snapped. "And I don't need saving anymore." Kuhn's response was soft but wounded. "I know. I just don't know how to stop trying." The silence that followed was painful but necessary. They both realized that love couldn't exist inside a hierarchy. It had to stand beside it. Months passed, and Serena took a short journey alone to the northern forests where she'd once been imprisoned. She needed to face her ghosts without Kuhn's shadow over her shoulder. In the ruins of her old cell, she sat cross-legged and let the memories come. The needles, the isolation, the hunger. Instead of breaking her, they gave her strength. She whispered to the empty air, "You didn't win." When she returned home, Kuhn was waiting at the gate, eyes wary but full of quiet pride. She didn't need to explain where she'd gone. He already knew. Some distances healed by being walked alone. The new world slowly began to take shape. Packs and hybrids joined in cooperative councils, blending governance and shared resources. Serena spearheaded education programs, ensuring no child grew up in ignorance or fear. Kuhn established defense alliances with vampire reformists like Valen, who, after imprisonment, returned seeking atonement. Forgiveness was difficult, but Serena believed redemption mattered more than vengeance. Despite political complexities, moments of peace glimmered. Communal meals under moonlight, laughter echoing across the rebuilt compound, newborn pups tumbling through grass. Life, fragile and beautiful, continued. A winter storm swept through the region, isolating them for days. Serena spent the time writing, her memoir part history, part confession. She wanted the world to understand what it meant to be hybrid, to live between definitions. Kuhn read her drafts quietly at night, sometimes smiling, sometimes frowning. "You make me sound human," he said. Serena laughed softly. "That's the point." In those days, they rediscovered simplicity, shared meals, long talks, the warmth of firelight. For the first time, the future didn't feel like a battlefield. Spring brought diplomatic progress and new threats. Extremist remnants tried to sabotage trade routes between supernatural territories. Serena led a mission to negotiate peace, but an ambush forced her to rely on her hybrid abilities once more. She subdued the attackers with terrifying grace, her power fully realized, her control absolute. Witnesses later said she moved like light made flesh. That moment solidified her reputation not as a weapon, but as a leader capable of bridging two worlds. Even Kuhn, watching from afar, admitted quietly, she doesn't need saving anymore, and maybe that's what love was always supposed to mean. Peace conferences followed, with human and supernatural leaders signing accords for coexistence. There were compromises and betrayals, but progress endured. Serena addressed the assembly, "We've lived too long defined by fear. The world will never be perfect, but it can be better." Her speech became a symbol, a manifesto of unity. Later that night, Kuhn proposed in the simplest way imaginable. No grand gesture, no public display. Just a quiet, almost shy question as they stood under the stars. "Stay with me. Not because you have to, but because you want to." Serena smiled. "Always." Their union was celebrated with a rare moonlit ceremony. Wolves, vampires, and humans gathered together. Misery presided, cracking jokes that made Serena laugh through her tears. The vows were short, raw, and perfect. When Kuhn bid her, not as a mark of ownership but of chosen bond, it was an act of equality. The bite sealed not dominance, but partnership. The moment pulsed with symbolism, two beings, once instruments of power, now choosing each other freely. The pack howled, the sky split with silver light, and for a heartbeat, even the world seemed to pause in reverence. Married life did not dull their fire. They still argued, still fought shoulder to shoulder in council meetings and training yards. But their disagreements now built bridges instead of walls. Together, they established a refuge network for hybrids around the world. Each safe house bore Serena's symbol, a broken chain reforged into a circle. Her name became legend, whispered among frightened children as proof that survival was possible. And Kun, who once believed strength meant solitude, finally learned that strength could mean standing beside someone without trying to lead them. Years passed. The world changed slowly, unevenly. Some human nations accepted coexistence, others resisted with violence. Serena and Kun weathered both victories and heartbreak. When Misery died defending a hybrid convoy, grief consumed them. The loss reminded Serena that peace always carried a price. At Misery's memorial, Serena spoke. She taught us that immortality isn't about living forever, it's about leaving something worth remembering. Her words became a mantra carved on stone at the memorial site. Time softened them. Gray threaded Kun's hair. Laughter lines deepened around Serena's eyes. The compound had become a thriving city, filled with life and light. On quiet evenings, they watched the sunset from their porch, surrounded by the next generation of hybrids and wolves who didn't know fear like they once had. In those moments, silence meant peace, not tension. The ghosts that had haunted Serena for so long had finally learned to rest. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Kun led Serena back to the cabin where it all began, the one in the forest, long rebuilt. He opened the door to reveal a simple home prepared just for her, bookshelves lined with her writings, and a garden outside filled with moonflowers. As they stood together under the soft light, Serena whispered, "You found me here once." Kun smiled faintly, "And I'll keep finding you in every life." They kissed, surrounded by the quiet hum of the forest, the same forest that had once been a prison, now transformed into sanctuary. Epilogue. Years later, stories of the hybrid queen and the lone alpha became myth. Children grew up believing that love could change even the oldest laws of nature. In the rebuilt world, wolves and humans live side by side, their differences no longer grounds for war but for wonder. Serena's memoir became required reading in schools. Kun's name was etched into history not as a conqueror, but as the alpha who learned compassion. And in a small house on the edge of the forest, where wildflowers grew freely, two scents lingered forever intertwined, wolf and woman, strength and grace, proof that impossible love had remade the world.